It's no secret that Joe Budden and Andrew Schulz don't like each other, but the question is why. You see, we have to rewind a little bit to 2016 to get the answer to that question. More specifically, let's rewind a little bit to the joint episode that Joe Budden and his co-host at the time, Rory, did with the Brilliant Idiots with Andrew Schulz and Charlamagne the God. You see, Joe Budden wanted to come on the Brilliant Idiots to confront Charlamagne the God and Andrew Schulz about their criticisms of him dissing Drake. So at the time, Joe Budden and Drake was embroiled into a one-sided rap beef to where Joe Budden essentially was dropping a diss track every 10 seconds against Drake. So Charlamagne the God and Andrew Schulz had a podcast live show, and they essentially said that Joe Budden was cloud chasing, right? Joe Budden was delusional and deranged. Joe Budden took issue with that. So he came on the Brilliant Idiots to confront Charlamagne the God and Andrew Schulz for saying that.
We're here to have a positive dialogue, a productive dialogue. I listened to, what's it called? I'll name this podcast later.
Don't do that. I came up here to really check you. But then so much happened. Okay. I don't have to check anybody. I'm just right now. Now I'm just right.
Okay.
All you media, Joe Budden crazy, jabbing at the air, bunch of bars, who's he dissing, why, what the Not so crazy no more.
But Budden, you're a smart guy.
Not so crazy no more.
You're a smart guy, so you have to know.
Can we acknowledge that first?
Absolutely.
Okay,
without question.
Wait. What are we acknowledging? That it worked?
No, not that.
No.
That remember when we did the Billionaires podcast live?
Yeah.
We had just heard. We was in the car together.
Yeah, heard the song.
The 6-minute disc for Making of a Murderer comes out. We're listening. After 3-4 minutes, I go, what the is Budden talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Because there was no context to it.
I'm not mad at that.
So when I got on the stage, I said that was the most pointless diss record I ever heard. I didn't say it was whack.
At the time, Charlamagne the God and others were calling Joe Budden delusional and psychotic for thinking that Drake was sneak dissing him and mentioning him on every other song. Like, Joe Budden would come on his podcast and say, yo, I just heard this song, and only me and Drake would know that Drake is dissing me because Drake mentioned something that's very personal to us. And we will all say, bro, Drake don't know who you are. Like, Drake ain't worried about you, bro. Like, stop it. But then, you know, looking back in hindsight, Joe Budden was absolutely correct, right? If we look at, I guess, how things play out in the history of Drake sneak dissing. Now, the conversation will quickly go from, you know, talking about the diss tracks to Joe thinking that Charlamagne the God is a puppet due to how Charlamagne the God is covering Joe and talking about Joe on his podcast and on the Breakfast Club.
Well, let's talk about other things.
I'm just a podcast guy.
Why am I a puppet? I want to know about that.
Because I believe, I'm going to just refer back to the Dame conversation. I fall on that side. You fall on the other side.
Which side?
I can see it more. I think your hip hop roots would shine and flourish a little more if your show allowed it, or if the radio allowed it, or if it was allowed. You have the #1 show. I think there are restraints. I think there's a ceiling over you. And I could tell when you, Envy, and Angela start leveraging your relationships or just thinking about your relationships as you're doing your job. That's called a puppet, Sean.
Andrew was getting really annoyed at Joe because he felt like Joe was throwing out a lot of accusations, but he really wasn't backing it up with any type of examples. So that really pissed off Andrew, and he tried to hold Joe accountable, which led to Andrew and Joe kind of having a brief combative moments throughout the podcast.
Example though,
That's called a puppet,
respond to
Charlamagne.
nothing. You're responding to nothing. You're responding to. He didn't say a single bit of evidence here. Give me an example. You just gave opinion. You need evidence to back up opinion. So
in any
logical discourse, you need evidence to back up opinion. Why would you respond? You're responding to clouds.
Listen,
Not true. You don't. So 1 minute you don't fact check, and the next minute you just discuss the facts.
So this is a personal thing.
Joe, you were the first Birdman on the Breakfast Club.
So this is a personal thing against you. It's not about Charlamagne being hip hop or not. You think that he's disparaging your character, and then you're looking for other reasons to be upset at him. This is a personal you and Charlamagne thing, not a hip hop thing.
Your interpretation is poor. Or you're purposely trying to twist my words. Either way, I'm not responding.
I don't have to twist
anything.
anything.
Not what I.
Honestly, things didn't get too bad, and I thought they had a great conversation. Now, they were supposed to do a part 2 afterwards, to where Andrew Schulz and Charlamagne will go over and do a podcast with Rory and Maul and Joe. However, when that time came, Joe told Charlamagne the God that he doesn't want for Andrew Schulz to show up.
Andrew, I did not invite you here, #1, because I had no desire to speak with you.
I have no desire to speak with you is harsh. But even in their explanation for why Andrew Schulz wasn't there or why they didn't want Andrew Schulz there, they were like really dismissive of Andrew Schulz.
Number 2, your presence would have made this a Brilliant Idiots mashup again. Number 3, Charlamagne and I had some history that I would like us to get to. You particularly don't have anything to do with that. I saw you tweeting that I was scared.
I think he was shook.
I think that Andrew overestimates his intelligence and underestimates my arrogance. To say that. Either way, we're not scared of Andrew Schulz.
Yes, listen, I'm definitely going to have to hear about this tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be, see, they started off the podcast talking about me and I wasn't there to
Well, I
defend
wanted
myself.
to get that out the way because him and I just had a recent exchange and I wanted to let him know he's still a friend of the show. Even though now, if I have to let's start there. Let's start on a nice light note. I think I have a better white co-host than you.
Oh, nah, Andrew washes Roy.
At what?
I don't think
He's
so.
funnier, smarter.
What?
At this point in time, Joe Budden had little to no respect for Andrew Schulz. You can tell by how he speaks about Andrew Schulz, bro. Like, he considered Andrew Schulz Charlamagne the God's sidekick and nothing else and nothing more. And this enraged Andrew Schulz, bro. Like, Andrew Schulz was incredibly upset, but there was nothing he could do about it. Joe at the time had one of the meteoric rises in podcasts, bro. Like, they were lit. Joe Budden was a mainstream star. Andrew Schulz was sort of on the up and come up, and Joe Budden gave him no respect whatsoever. Like, Joe Budden could be caught calling Andrew Schulz a lackey.
You have to be great. That's what I was trying to say with Schulz.
Not true.
It doesn't matter.
It's not true at all.
It's,
You don't have to be great. You don't have to
You're
be
diminishing him
great.
by trying to say he was Charlamagne's lackey.
He was.
If you don't,
You don't have to be great, though.
even if that was true,
He sold out Radio City, which means he should be great. Yet when you watch him on Brilliant Idiots, he still look like a lackey and sound like a lackey. Why? Because he's a lackey.
no, he's not.
All right.
I never watched the show, so I can't
He's a
attest
lackey.
to that. What I'm saying is this.
And this is respectfully, Schultz, but you know I think you're a lackey.
Listen to what I'm saying.
That soundbite actually came a little bit after this timeline, but that just goes to show how little respect Joe had for Andrew Schulz. Like, even after Andrew Schulz was doing sold-out shows, Joe Budden was still calling him a lackey and claiming, that he was Charlamagne the God's sidekick and Charlamagne the God was carrying Andrew Schulz, right? Like, that's how little respect Joe had for Andrew Schulz. And whenever Joe would speak about Andrew Schulz, he was like just super condescending and low-broing Andrew Schulz. Now, Andrew Schulz was asked about this, asked about the narrative that, he's somehow Charlamagne the God's sidekick and how Joe Budden and them don't respect him and they call him a lackey. Now, when Andrew Schulz would answer this, like, you could see, like, Andrew Schulz's face. It was like Game 7 Kobe. You could see the focus, and you could tell that Andrew Schulz was committed to making sure that Joe Budden and everybody on that podcast would eat their words.
It's his ending. Right. And also, on the Joe Budden podcast recently, they said you were a bad co-host because Charlamagne is a New York Times bestseller now, and they were trying to say you don't match up with him. How do you feel about all that shit and everything like that? They kind of like tried to downplay you. I know I saw it on Twitter. Rory and Mal and Joe Budden.
I guess what I would say is like, my debut comedy album, independently produced, #1 comedy album in the world. You know what I mean? I've been a lead in a sitcom. I've been a co-star of a dramedy. I got over 20 million views on my stand-up clips on YouTube. I'm elite at what I do. You know what I'm saying? I have an international tour. I sell out. So I'm elite at what I do. What I asked them this last week on the podcast is, we know Joe is elite at what he does. I just don't know what Rory and Mal do.
Andrew Schulz was confident within himself and dedicated to doing the work, which is why Andrew Schulz would eventually get the last laugh. You see, at that particular time, nobody could envision a world where Andrew Schulz would evolve out of Charlamagne the God's shadow and become just as famous as Charlamagne the God. But Andrew Schulz had other plans, and he was dedicated to making any doubter a believer.
What up, guys? I got bangs. Also, we have another important announcement. We have a new YouTube channel just for Flagrant 2. That's right. That's how popping these vids are getting because of you. So please.
Andrew decided to step out of Charlamagne the God's shadow and start his own podcast, a second podcast in which he would be the lead mic. Now, the podcast would be called Flagrant 2. He started the podcast with his two homies, Akash and Cass. Now, the podcast was an instant success, and as the numbers rose, Andrew Schultz's notoriety rose with it. Having a hit podcast in Brilliant Idiots and another hit podcast in Flagrant 2, well, Andrew Schulz was becoming a household name. But Andrew Schulz was still vengeful, and he still remembered how Joe Budden treated him when he wasn't as famous. So Andrew Schulz would exact revenge back on Joe Budden by essentially criticizing Joe Budden as cruelly as possible and getting into Joe Budden's affair. And that became evident when Joe Budden would announce a split from his Spotify podcast deal. Now, Andrew Schulz will ridicule this split and claim that Joe Budden was asking for entirely way too much from Spotify, an amount that Andrew Schulz will say that Joe Budden isn't worth.
You know what Joe was trying to say, or maybe we didn't read or listen to or watch something that he was trying to say. Maybe we got this wrong. And then I heard from the grapevine that Joe asked Spotify for $250 million.
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Wait, what?
This is a reliable grapevine?
This is a reliable grapevine that he asked Spotify for $250 million. So everybody in the comments, shut the fuck up. This goofy out here talking about $250 million. $250 million?
Yo, that business education he was talking about, he's getting, you need to keep educating, buddy.
Bruh.
$250 million?
Wait, what? They wouldn't even give you a fucking Rolex Submariner. You want $250 million?
Andrew Schulz is calling Joe Budden a goofy because Andrew Schulz is still vengeful that Joe Budden didn't invite him on the podcast with Charlamagne the God and that Joe Budden treated him like a little bro. And now that Andrew Schulz is up, he was going to use his platform to go at Joe Budden. Now, Joe Budden will respond back to Andrew Schulz and tell Andrew Schulz that he was a liar and he never asked for $250 million.
I hate you. You like the B Mike All-Stars. A bunch of stupid idiots that anytime they get to talking about business to people that know business, you know what it sounds like? A bunch of that don't know fucking business. Shut the fuck up. Andrew Schulz is running around saying that we asked for $250 million from Spotify.
Was that real? I saw that headline of the clip. I didn't click it.
Rory.
He didn't really say that, right?
He said that. He's got his stupid Charlotte Avengers, Adam Schultz. Is that his name?
Andrew.
Andrew Schultz. I'm back to Adam. Adam Schultz out there. Hey, Joe asked for $250. Joe is a lunatic. Joe is crazy. Joe doesn't know what he's doing. Hey, that's not true. But let's pretend it is.
That's what I just said.
Hey, let's pretend that Joe asked for $250. Who the is this white dude and this Indian dude sitting in these chairs that get to discuss me?
Now you have to understand the dynamics that are playing here. Andrew Schulz is feeling like his podcast career is going up, and he feels like Joe has hit a rough spot. So Andrew Schulz took the opportunity, man, to kind of like sun Joe, to tell Joe how his podcast is doing better, how they're more profitable, he got more money, and he even offered to sign Joe Budden to a podcast deal.
But in all seriousness, to, Dog Jerkin Joe, we got to talk about Dog Jerkin Joe. Dog Jerkin Joe has no business acumen. He signs horrible deals after horrible deals. You can't complain about the deals that you've gotten for 10 years straight and then go, I'm good at signing deals. Right? It's simple business. The fact is, Joe does not have any business savvy whatsoever. We're a way more profitable podcast than him. I know the numbers. I know the numbers. I hear the numbers. I speak to all the same people that they speak to, and they talk about Joe like he's a clown. It's sad. It's really sad.
Dude. I want to help. I think Joe is so talented.
This is what I'm gonna offer. I have a advertising agency, right? That's called a business.
Do you work for it or you own?
I own the advertising
agency, got it.
Which services obviously our podcast, but also some of your favorite podcasts. And when I say your, I don't mean your Akash. I mean you, Joe. But you don't know that because I don't need to brag about all my shit behind the scenes, but it is what it is. So this is what I'm doing. I'm going to offer you this. If you really want to go independent, if you got the balls to really go independent, not sign up for another daddy, but if you really want to go independent, like you say, I will partner with you on the advertising. We will bring advertisements, which you will get a percentage of.
Andrew Schulz now had the opportunity to low bro Joe, and he took it. Like, it was at this point where the Joe and Andrew Schulz dynamic sort of changed. I feel like Joe began to appreciate or look at Andrew Schulz like an equal. At one point, when he was dissing Charlamagne the God, he actually called Andrew Schulz the A-Mike after once calling Andrew Schulz a lackey.
They were saying that old boy was getting at you too. Envy Man, he was getting at you.
Who's Envy Man?
Charlamagne. Said that he got.
I'm not arguing with nobody that's the B mic on their show. If it's your show and you the B mic, shut the fuck up. I'm not arguing. You have taken yourself out of Pod Wars.
Do you really? Oh, okay.
What?
You really feel that he's a B mic?
He's the B mic on his show.
Because a lot of times when you get at niggas with truth. So I'm just making sure that you really feel this way.
He's 100% the B mic.
Okay.
When he's sitting next to Schultz on his show, he's the B mic.
That was the moment where Joe Budden publicly recognized Andrew Schulz as a peer and recognized all the growth and success that Andrew Schulz have had. But it came a little too late because right around the time Joe was recognizing Andrew Schulz as a peer, Andrew Schulz was treating Joe Budden like how Joe Budden treated him in 2016. Andrew Schulz was moving as if he believed that he has surpassed Joe Budden. Because nowadays, when Andrew Schulz go on various podcasts and they ask him about Joe Budden, Andrew Schulz would essentially not speak on Joe Budden at all. And, you know, the reason he would give or similarly allude to is that he believes that he has surpassed Joe Budden and he don't want to give Joe Budden any more light.
This is a question that I really wanted to throw out there. Andrew, you've been criticized most recently by Joe Budden. People like to claim that Andrew Schulz kind of like used hip hop to get his career off the ground and then essentially abandons it. There was a clip of Joe Budden basically saying, did I say Joe Rogan at first?
No, you said
Joe Budden. Joe Budden said basically that
he wants a shout out from me so
you
bad,
were a
bro.
culture vulture and that you use like the Charlamagne cosign to basically get yourself some level of relevance, and now you're doing the flagrant thing, which is not hip hop. Was this ever part of the plan? Were you ever like, this will be a great way to infiltrate the black community?
Shout out to Joe Budden. fuck Andrew Schulz.
Just so you know what side he's on. Yeah.
You got me, Joe. No, I don't think it was an elaborate plan. No, I don't think so.
Okay.
He just mad at you?
Say again?
He just mad at you?
No, I don't know. I don't know what his whole deal is.
You see Andrew, his mouth crooked to the side is something.
Yeah,
he don't want to say.
Because he knows he's winning, that he's even getting this kind of commentary from Joe Budden.
You said it.
When you started.
So Andrew Schulz is treating Joe Budden how Joe Budden treated him in 2016. And to look back and think that all of this started because Joe Budden didn't invite Andrew Schulz onto the podcast episode, it's kind of crazy, man. Hopefully Joe Budden and Andrew Schulz fix their issues, man, all right? Hopefully. But y'all let me know in the comment section, what do you guys think about this, man? Who do you guys think is bigger right now, Joe Budden or Andrew Schulz? Because, you know, answers vary based on who you're asking. Now, if you're still watching this video, click on this video right here to find out how Ray J solved this 30-year Tupac mystery. Click on this video right here to find out what I'm talking about. I'm going to see you guys in this video. For real, I'm going to see you guys in this video. I'm out of here, folks. Peace.